Welcome to the Faith Radio Reading the Bible Together podcast. I'm your host, Angela Smith, and we are so excited to have you join us to read the Bible together. In this first episode, we're just going to tell you a little bit about why we're doing this and what it is. And so joining me today, I have an all-star cast from Faith Radio. We have Faith Radio managers, Neil Staven.
Hello. Welcome.
And
I guess, no, you're supposed to say welcome, right? So
welcome.
I can say, yeah.
Welcome. We're glad you're here, Neil.
Yes, thank you.
Program Director, Ben Holsen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And Producer and Creative Services, Kim Sanders.
Hello.
Yay! So I'm so glad we all gathered. So we kind of spur of the moment that, there's a real heart behind this podcast and why we want to do it. And so we thought it would be great to just welcome you to the table and talk about why we're doing this and why it's important to us. So why are we doing this, guys?
That's a great question. Can I start? Is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
So as I read through the Bible, there are often so many questions that I have and go, what does that mean? And how does that impact my life? And I write down questions, and I'm often texting my pastor friends. But what a blessing to be able to do all of this together as one family, as one body, to be able to learn and read God's Word and to utilize the resources that we have at the University of Northwestern.
And I think on top of that, there's a nice accountability that, because sometimes you get stuck with those questions. And if you can't find the answer, it's tempting to give up, move on, go back to the Psalms, right? Something that sounds real nice. But if you can gather together, even if it's, you're by yourself when you're reading the Bible, but you've got a community of people who are all in the same place at the same time as you, or have been reading it. Maybe you're visiting this podcast much later on and you're going to do the reading plan from a year ago. That's fine too, because we're processing those questions in these podcasts. And here's a resource for you to feel that community come around you too. It's you and God, but it's also a lot of other God-fearing people who love the Word and are engaging as well.
Yeah, and at Faith Radio, we believe that God's Word is alive and active. So to your point, Kim, whether you're doing it with us in real time or you're doing it after the fact, it's still alive, it's still active, and God is still at work.
I was thinking that there's an old song about, I think Bruce Carroll talked about, the more we get into God's Word, the more God's Word gets into us. And that's really, we're doing it together, that's great, but really it's doing it is the key part, right? Getting into God's Word every day is what's going to really make a difference in your life.
Well, I completely agree with that, especially to somebody that might be newer in their faith or newer to reading and experiencing God through His Word, and just the dauntingness of the Bible and how big it can seem to so many people, and to realize that, wow, not only are we reading this together, and there's, again, a whole community, but there are just so many resources here that's going to kind of stand beside me and walk along with me in some of these passages that I may have heard in Sunday school growing up, but I don't really understand what's below the surface of these stories and what God is really trying to convey.
Or the context.
Amen.
What's the social, historical, cultural context of it? And to be able to, because not everybody has the opportunity to go and get a Bible degree. What I'm really excited about is that we're able to partner with the university and kind of, give people the opportunity at some of that. The Bible is alive and active, but to also be able to look at it a little bit from an academic perspective, to understand some of that background too, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, and then you can take those tools and apply them to other places in the Bible, right? And suddenly it's not so daunting to open up the Word, and God's Word does get into your heart, and it starts actually affecting your life. It can be transformative. Instead of this thing on your to-do list as a Christian, it becomes something that it's a lifeline to you.
I think our passion at Faith Radio has always been, to share God's Word, and that's what the history of this ministry is all about. And it's not just enough to hear it, but then to apply it. And so we need to know what it says, and then we need to know what it means, and then what it means to you and to me. And so I think this is an opportunity coming up, if you engage with us, that you're going to understand, at every level. You'll understand what it says, and then also what it means, and then draw conclusions about what it means, for us to apply.
And make space for God to use it in our life, to find us, to refine us, and define us. Lots of fines. Refine, define us. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what it is, what this is, what the podcast is going to look like, what reading the Bible together is going to look like.
Well, you're the host of the podcast, so I'll leave that to you, at least to start. But the basic reading plans started as just all you need is access to a Bible or really an internet connection, because you can go to Bible Gateway or some of these other tools that allow you to read the Word online, or you can download apps. And then we just say, starting on this date, read one chapter a day. That's how they started. And now we're just building on them so that instead of just being in the Word, if you want, you can go deeper with a podcast and hear from some Bible experts and people who have been reading the Bible for a long time. And you can engage in study guides where you can actually write down the responses to some thinking questions that let you really dialogue with God, think about how you're applying this in your life or what it might mean to you and to others around you. And we're just equipping you to really make this something that you could build into a habit.
And we know that, it takes a little time to develop habits. And, a lot of people probably aren't in the habit of reading regularly the Bible. I mean, we pick it up from time to time, but to be systematic and just to say, I'm just going to do this for a period of time. Is it 6 days, 28 days, whatever it is, and I'm going to take some time and every day just get into this habit, this rhythm of doing this, and then knowing that there are others that are doing it. I think, Ben, you were talking about that accountability factor. I mean, maybe you're doing it with a couple of friends, and it just gives an opportunity to spark a conversation, or just know that we're in this together and see what God does, because He loves it when we get into His Word.
Mm. Absolutely, and bite-sized pieces too.
Yeah.
A chapter a day.
Yeah.
And then when you're done reading that chapter, you can go to the podcast and dig deeper and learn more and hear really important conversations about what you just read. And so you can apply that in your life, and you can grow deeper in your faith, and you can feel God in new ways, which I think is really important.
Yeah. And what I love is that we're giving people the opportunity to linger a little bit in a chapter, linger with the chapter for a day. And I mean, I think sometimes we can approach Bible study looking for the thing. What's the thing that I'm going to take with me on my day today? And be there's nothing wrong with that, but I think we can become overly task-oriented even in our time with God. So to be able to spend time and linger and with other people, and to gnaw on it for a while and linger with God and allow God to use His Word to speak into us as well.
There were some studies done several years ago from the Center for Bible Engagement that did a major research project and discovered that people that engage in the Bible, which is more than simply just reading, but it's really engaging. It's doing just as you said. It's being willing to pray and to say, God, speak to me through your Word today. Engagement in the Bible makes a dramatic difference in your life. That if someone engaged in the Bible 4 days a week, there was a dramatic drop in succumbing to temptation. There was an increase in stronger relationships. I mean, there's just a whole list of things that you're like, well, how can these even be related? But the fact is that, as you said right at the outset, God's Word is living and active. I mean, it gets into when we get into it, it gets into us. And so engaging the Bible is something that we want to encourage each and every day. And here's just maybe one more way that to help you do that, just to get back on it and jump in with us.
I love that. The more that we get into it, it gets into us. Yeah. And so the way that what this podcast is going to look like is we'll have different series that will come out. So it's really important that you subscribe to the podcast, because then the new episodes will just come up into your feed and you'll be able to go right along with us. But this podcast will be available wherever you listen to podcasts. So make sure that you go and subscribe.
The Reading the Bible Together podcast is a production of Faith Radio and Northwestern Media. Hosted, produced, and edited by Angela Smith. If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, consider financially supporting Faith Radio. Find more information at myfaithradio.com.
On the latest episode of the Wild God Stories podcast, we go to Africa.
I was raised in Sierra Leone in a community that truly lived the phrase, "It takes a village."
Until one day, the world outside Anita's village broke in.
I didn't grow up in a war zone, but I watched one unfold in the country I love.
God brought hope to her story and many others through radical provision.
God began to direct us towards Uganda, Africa.
I was born and grew up in the countryside of Ethiopia.
Nanj and I met in Kigali, Rwanda.
Discover how God showed up in the middle of war, loss, and impossible odds in Africa. Stories that'll make you say,
"Wow, God.
Wow, God.
Wow, God."
Wow, God Stories. Wherever you get your podcasts.